She stood up at my dinner table, smiling. "I have a surprise," she said. "We're moving into Mom's house tomorrow." Glasses clinked. Someone laughed. My son looked proud. I folded my napkin slowly, smoothed it flat beside my plate. "That's perfect," I said. "Because tomorrow, at 8 a.m., I hand these keys to the new owners." Her smile slipped first, then her glass. My son went pale, and no one at that table understood. The house they were celebrating was no longer mine to give. Before I tell you how it got to that moment, I just want to say thank you for being here. Truly, if you're watching from somewhere here in the US, tell me your state in the comments. I always read them. It reminds me we're not as alone as we sometimes feel. And if stories about dignity, boundaries, and quiet strength speak to you, go ahead and subscribe. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, because none of this started with a dinner announcement. It started with small things I almost ignored. My name is Evelyn Hart. I'm 67 years old. Until last spring, my life felt settled. Not exciting, not dramatic, just steady. I lived in the same red brick house for 42 years. Maple Ridge Drive, big oak tree in front. Wind chimes on the porch that sang when the afternoon breeze rolled through. Every morning at 6:15, I made coffee, 2 scoops, dash of cinnamon. I still reached for 2 mugs sometimes, even though my husband has been gone 8 years. Grief doesn't leave loudly, it lingers in habits. My son Mark grew up in that house, learned to ride his bike in the driveway, carved his initials into the basement workbench when he was 10. After my husband passed, it was just me and the walls. But the walls didn't scare me. They held birthdays, report cards, Christmas mornings with wrapping paper everywhere. That house wasn't space. It was proof I had built something that lasted. Mark married Brielle 5 years ago. She's polished, always put together, the kind of woman who compliments your curtains while checking the square footage. At first, I was grateful for her. After the funeral, she started coming by on Wednesdays, banana bread, lemon muffins, little touches of concern. She would sit in my husband's old armchair, cross her legs carefully, look around the room with that thoughtful expression. "It's such a big house for just you," she'd say softly. "Don't you ever feel lonely?" "Lonely," she said it gently, but she said it often. Mark started saying it too. "Mum, wouldn't something smaller be easier? Less maintenance, less stress." I would stir my coffee and smile. "I'm fine here," I'd tell them, because I was. The creaky stairs didn't bother me. The yard didn't overwhelm me. The quiet didn't scare me. But their tone shifted slowly. It wasn't one big conversation. It was layers. Articles about break-ins in the area. Casual mentions of rising property taxes. Brochures for condos left on my kitchen counter by accident. One Sunday, Brielle brought lamb, my favorite. She plated everything beautifully. Candles lit. Music playing softly in the background. After dessert, she leaned back in her chair. "We sold our condo," she said lightly. Mark smiled beside her. "We're thinking bigger," he added. I nodded politely. "That's exciting." Brielle's eyes flicked toward the walls. "Well, actually," she said, smoothing her napkin, "we were thinking maybe we don't need bigger." Mark reached for my hand. "We could move in here, Mum. Save for a while. Help you with the house. Be close." The words were warm, but something underneath them felt rehearsed. I looked down at our joined hands. His palm used to fit inside mine. Now it felt like he was steadying me, instead of the other way around. "I'm not planning to sell," I said gently. Brielle smiled wider. "Oh, we're not talking about selling, not yet." After that night, the visits increased. Conversations changed shape. 3 bedrooms is a lot for one person. The market is really strong right now. You shouldn't let all that equity just sit there. Equity. I noticed when the language shifted. from home to asset, from comfort to value. One evening, I stood alone in my kitchen. The house was quiet. I ran my hand across the countertop. My husband and I installed ourselves. We measured twice, cut once, argued about the finish for a week. For the first time, I felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not anger, measurement. Like someone else was already calculating the walls. I didn't feel betrayed yet. I just felt observed. And that small, hard-earned peace I had built after losing my husband, that quiet life I had stitched back together, was about to be tested. I didn't know how far they were willing to go, but I was starting to understand something. This wasn't about closeness, it was about control. And that peace I had protected for 8 long years was about to end. It didn't happen in one loud argument. It tightened slowly. Like a knot you don't notice until it's hard to breathe. One Wednesday afternoon, Brielle arrived without muffins. No bright smile, no small talk. She placed a thick folder on my kitchen table. "We ran projections," she said. Mark stood near the window, hands in his pockets, not looking at me. Brielle opened the folder. Charts, printouts, mortgage estimates, selling comparisons. "If the house sells for around 400,000, she began carefully, "you could buy a condo for maybe 150. That leaves a very comfortable cushion." Cushion. I touched the edge of the paper. "And that cushion?" I asked. She smiled. "It could help us secure something permanent. We'd finally stop wasting money on rent." Mark nodded. "It's just practical, Mum. Practical." I folded the corner of the spreadsheet neatly. "And where do I fit into this plan?" I asked. Brielle blinked. "You'd be in a safer place, smaller, closer to us. Closer." The word felt less like comfort and more like containment. "And if I don't want to move?" I asked quietly. Mark exhaled sharply. "Mom, you're being stubborn." "Stubborn?" I rested both palms flat on the table. "Is protecting my home stubborn?" Brielle leaned forward. "We're not asking you to give anything away. It would be a loan. Documented. 10 years. We'd pay you back every year. 10 years. At 67, 10 years isn't a planning window, it's a horizon." "I'll think about it," I said. But that wasn't the worst part. 2 weeks later, they invited me to dinner. I arrived, and there was a man sitting at the table with a leather briefcase. "Mom," Mark said brightly. "This is Daniel. He's just explaining market trends." Market trends. Like I had requested a presentation. I stood still in the doorway. "I didn't agree to this," I said calmly. Brielle laughed lightly. "Oh, don't be dramatic. It's just information." "Dramatic." Daniel began talking about appreciation rates, peak selling seasons, low inventory. I watched my son nod. Not once did he ask if I was comfortable. Not once did he look at me. Then Brielle said something that shifted everything. "If we don't move quickly, Mom might lose value. Lose value. Like I was the house. Like I was a declining asset." I pushed my chair back slowly. "I am not losing anything," I said. Mark's tone hardened. "We're trying to build something here. Why won't you help?" "I already helped," I replied softly. "For 38 years." The table went quiet. But that wasn't the worst part. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. A text from Brielle. "We've decided to move in temporarily, just until we save enough. We'll be there Saturday." No question, no discussion, just decision. My hands went cold. I called Mark immediately. "You can't just decide to move into my home," I said. He sounded tired, irritated. "Mom, it makes sense. We're family." "Family asks," I replied. He sighed. "You always say you're lonely. Now we're offering to be close and suddenly it's a problem." Lonely. There it was again, turned into leverage. "Don't twist that," I said quietly. A pause. Then his voice lowered. "If you won't support us now, Don't expect us to be around later. It wasn't shouted. That made it worse. I didn't feel anger in that moment. I felt something close, like a door inside me quietly shutting. That night, I walked through every room of my house, the staircase railing, the hallway mirror, the back door frame where we marked his height every birthday. I rested my hand against the wall in his old bedroom. I wasn't going to be negotiated out of my own life. That's when something shifted inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a steady realization. I would not stay silent. But I also wouldn't argue, because arguments give people time to adjust. Planning doesn't. And as I stood in that quiet house, I stopped defending and started preparing. The following Saturday came and went. No moving truck, no boxes, just silence. They were waiting for me to bend, waiting for loneliness to do what pressure hadn't. I made coffee at 6:15 like always. 2 scoops, dash of cinnamon. The house felt the same, but I didn't. I opened the hallway closet later that morning. Mark's old winter coat still hung there, navy blue, worn at the cuffs. I took it down, folded it carefully, placed it in a donation box, not out of anger, just clarity. I had been holding space for him in closets, drawers, conversations, while he was already redesigning my life without me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, listening to the house breathe, the refrigerator humming softly, the oak branches brushing the roof. After my husband died, this quiet used to comfort me. I would sit on the back steps at sunset and whisper, "We did good, didn't we?" And somehow, I always felt steadied. Now that steadiness was being labeled selfish. I got out of bed around 2 in the morning, walked barefoot into the living room, stood in the dark, and I asked myself a question I had avoided for months. What if I moved? Not for them, for me. The thought scared me. This house held 42 years. It held my marriage, my motherhood, my survival. But the fear wasn't about leaving, it was about being pushed. That difference mattered. The next morning, I called my sister Lena. She answered quickly. "Evelyn, is everything okay?" I didn't soften it. I told her about the folder, the real estate agent, the text message. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something simple. "They're not asking for help. They're asking for access. Access to my money, my home, my stability. I don't want to lose him," I whispered. She didn't rush to comfort me. "You might already be losing yourself," she said quietly. That sat heavy. But it was honest. The silence from Mark stretched into days. No calls, no check-ins, just absence. The kind meant to punish. I walked into his old bedroom that week, ran my hand along the dresser. I remembered staying up late, sewing patches on his baseball uniform, working double shifts after his father passed, packing lunches at 5 in the morning. I had already sacrificed enough. I didn't need to prove love through surrender. I pulled out my financial statements, pension income, savings, the small rental income from the shop space attached to the house. I ran the numbers carefully. If I sold around 430, bought something modest, I wouldn't be dependent. I wouldn't be cornered. I wouldn't be negotiating my peace over dinner tables. The thought didn't feel like revenge. It felt like oxygen. Mark finally showed up one evening without calling. He looked tired. "We're struggling," he said quickly. "Rent went up. Car repairs. We just need 50,000 to stabilize. 50,000. Not 250 now. Just enough to feel reasonable." I listened, didn't interrupt. When he finished, I asked one question. "If I give you that, what changes?" He blinked. "We'd get ahead." "How?" He talked about opportunity, timing, momentum, but not spending, not responsibility, not adjustment. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I just said, "I'll think about it." He left frustrated, still confident I would fold. That night, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror. I looked older than I remembered. Not fragile, just tired. And underneath that, something steady. Resolve. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt focused. If they could plan without me, I could plan without them. I scheduled an appointment with a real attorney. Not someone connected to Brielle. Someone neutral. Professional. Prepared. I didn't tell Mark. I didn't confront Brielle. I simply gathered information. Asked about trusts. About wills. About protection. I began organizing quietly. Documents in folders, copies in safe places, like someone securing valuables before a storm. And in that quiet process, an idea began forming. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. If they believed my home was leverage, what would happen if I removed it from the board completely? I didn't say anything yet, because power doesn't rush, it prepares. And as I lay in bed that night, listening to the house breathe again, I wasn't scared anymore. I was thinking, very carefully. The attorney's office was quiet. Soft carpet, neutral walls, no drama. He listened while I spoke. I didn't cry. I didn't exaggerate. I just laid it out. The folder, the pressure, the "we'll be there Saturday" text. He nodded slowly. "You don't need to prove anything," he said. "You just need to protect yourself. Protect." That word didn't feel selfish. It felt responsible. We reviewed the deed. Clear title. Only my name. No co-ownership. No hidden hooks. We updated my will, not to punish Mark, but to remove assumptions. If something happened to me, the house wouldn't automatically become a prize. We created a trust. Clean. Structured. Legal. No one could pressure a sale. No one could corner me into urgency again. I signed slowly. My hand didn't shake. I wasn't acting out of anger. I was acting out of clarity. The following week, I contacted a private real estate broker. Not the man they brought to dinner. Someone discreet. "I don't want a sign in the yard," I told her. "I don't want neighbors talking, and I don't want my son involved." She understood. There are quiet ways to sell property in this country. Relocation buyers, professional families, off-market listings. We listed it privately. No announcement, no confrontation, no warning. At the same time, I called Lena again. She told me about a coastal town in North Carolina. Small, slower, salt air, community. She sent photos of a condo, 2 bedrooms, large windows, balcony facing the water, 200,000, more than the one Brielle had chosen for me. But this one wasn't about shrinking, it was about starting over. I didn't commit right away. I gathered facts. Meanwhile, Mark and Brielle returned to their softer tone, weekly texts. "Mum, any thoughts? Have you reconsidered?" I answered kindly. "I'm thinking." Because I was, just not the way they imagined. One Sunday afternoon, Mark stopped by alone again. No folder this time, no spreadsheets, just fatigue. "Mom, we're desperate," he said. "We only need 50,000 now, just enough for a down payment." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We'll pay you back with interest, I promise." I studied his face. He wasn't cruel, he was entitled. That's harder to confront. "If I give you that," I asked quietly, "what changes in your habits?" He frowned. "It's not about habits." That was my answer. I nodded gently. "I'll think about it." He left frustrated, still believing the door wasn't closed. What he didn't know was that I had already stepped outside of it. Midway through that month, I received an offer. 430,000 cash. 30-day closing. I didn't celebrate. I didn't panic. I read it twice. Then I signed. The house was sold. No one knew. I flew to North Carolina quietly on a Tuesday. Walked through the condo in person, stepped onto the balcony, listened to the ocean. The air felt different there. Not heavy. Open. For the first time in months, I wasn't defending anything. I made the offer. 200,000. Accepted. Everything moved forward, calmly. Paperwork, escrow, dates. Mark still believed he was negotiating. Brielle was already discussing which room would be theirs. They talked about storage options, paint colours, furniture placement. I let them. I didn't correct them. Because sometimes the most powerful moment is not confrontation, it's timing. That evening, I stood in my kitchen, ran my hand along the counter again. She announced they were moving in, I whispered, and I realized something. This was never about revenge. It was about removal. Removing myself from a negotiation I never agreed to. Removing my home from leverage. Removing guilt from my decisions. The stage was set. The contracts were signed. The plane ticket was booked. All I had to do was wait. I invited them to dinner. No explanation. Just a simple text. Saturday, 7 o'clock. I have something to share. Mark replied quickly. Finally! That word told me he still believed this would end his way. Saturday afternoon, I cooked slowly. Lamb in the oven, potatoes simmering, green beans tossed in butter. The same meal he loved as a boy. Not to win him back, not to soften the blow, but because this was still my home, and I wanted the last memory here to be mine. I laid out the white tablecloth, polished the silverware, lit the candles just before they arrived. Brielle walked in glowing. New dress, fresh manicure, that confident smile. Mark followed behind her. You look good, Mom, he said. I feel good, I replied. We sat. Small talk, weather, traffic, nothing real. Brielle couldn't wait. So, what's the big announcement? I took a sip of water. Set the glass down carefully. I've decided to sell the house. Her eyes widened. Mark leaned back, relief washing over his face. I knew it, he said softly. I knew you'd understand. I raised my hand gently. I'm not finished. The room tightened. I've decided to sell the house, I repeated. And I already have. Brielle blinked. What? The closing was last week. The new owners move in 3 weeks. Mark stared at me. You already sold it? Yes. He looked stunned. But we were supposed to handle that. No, I said calmly. You assumed you would. Brielle leaned forward. How much? 430,000. Her breath caught. That's perfect. So we can. No. Just one word. Soft. Final. I am not lending you anything. Not 50,000. Not $1. Silence fell hard. Mark stood slowly. You can't be serious. I've also bought a condo, I continued. In North Carolina, near Lena, Ocean View. Brielle's chair scraped loudly against the floor. You're leaving? Yes. When? In a month. She stared at me. We've been planning our future around this. I met her eyes. I know. Mark's voice cracked slightly. How could you do this without telling us? I held his gaze. How could you plan to move into my house without asking me? He looked down. Brielle snapped. We're family. Family helps each other. Family respects boundaries, I said quietly. She scoffed. You're choosing money over your son. I didn't raise my voice. I'm choosing stability over pressure. Mark's face hardened. Don't expect us to be there when you need help. I nodded once. I won't. That seemed to unsettle him more than anger would have. They waited for me to soften, to apologize, to explain more. I didn't. I simply sat back down. Brielle grabbed her purse. This is selfish, she muttered. It's peaceful, I replied. They left before dessert. The door shut. The house went still. I walked back to the table, blew out the candles one by one, sat in the quiet. The silence felt different now, not tense, clean. 3 weeks later, I handed the keys to a young couple expecting their first child. They promised to keep the maple tree. I didn't look back when I stepped into the moving car. At the airport, Lena hugged me tight. When I stepped onto that balcony in North Carolina, the ocean stretched wide in front of me. No negotiation, no tension, just horizon. Months passed. Mark called once. Then again, more measured each time. Eventually, he said it. "I'm sorry, I let the silence sit between us." "I forgive you," I said. But I didn't say it quickly, and I didn't promise anything beyond that. In that moment, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel bitter. I felt steady. And in that steady silence, I finally felt free. When she stood up at my dinner table and announced they were moving into my house, she believed she had already won. She believed the conversation was finished, that my role was simply to agree. But she didn't understand something. I had already stepped out of the negotiation. She announced they were moving in, and I announced the house was sold. Not to embarrass them, not to punish them, but to remove myself from pressure. There's a difference. For a long time, I confused love with obligation. I believed being a good mother meant giving until I felt smaller, giving until I felt tired, giving until I felt resentful. That's not love, that's erosion. I don't hate my son. I don't wake up angry. But I no longer measure my worth by how much I sacrifice. Peace at this age feels different. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's sitting on a balcony at sunrise without bracing for the next demand. It's drinking coffee slowly without someone calculating what you own. It's knowing that your no doesn't need a paragraph after it. Mark and I still speak. Carefully, gently. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, and I'm not in a hurry. Forgiveness came. Reversal did not. That's something people don't talk about enough. You can forgive someone and still choose distance. You can love someone and still protect yourself. When I left that house, I didn't feel like I lost my son. I felt like I stopped losing myself. If you're listening and something in this story feels familiar, maybe it's not about property. Maybe it's about boundaries. Maybe it's about the moment someone assumed your life was negotiable. Let me tell you this clearly. You are not selfish for protecting what you built. You are not cruel for choosing stability, and you are never too old to rewrite your ending. I didn't win. No one lost. I just stopped pretending, and that was enough. Peace will always matter more than being right. And sometimes, peace begins with a quiet, steady no. Have you ever had to choose peace over pressure? Tell me in the comments. I'd really like to hear your story. If this reminded you of someone you care about, share it with them. And if you'd like more conversations like this, subscribe. Not for drama, for dignity.